President Obama is like President Bush in this regard. He doesn't receive dissenting groups in the White House. He throws out the single-payer advocates, including his longtime friend, Dr. Quentin Young, in Chicago, Illinois, and he's freezing out dissenting groups from meeting with him in the White House. They can't get a meeting with him. He's surrounded by warmongers. He's surrounded by the military-industrial complex, but he won't meet, for example, Veterans for Peace. He won't meet Iraq veterans against the war. He won't meet the student groups and the religious groups and the business groups and others who opposed the Iraq war back in 2003. What is he afraid of here? You know, we're supposed to have a new wave with the Obama administration. Instead, we have the same old, same old. And I think the whole idea, just let me make this, the whole idea that Obama is for things, but they're not practical. He's for single payer. He really doesn't like war, but he goes along and he goes along. We have to have the American people give the White House a measure of political courage here, because it's not going to come from inside the White House. And he ought to open the way to meet with Veterans for Peace.
If I can respond, what I'd like to say is this. If I may respond, you know, I think that with 3 years left in the Obama presidency, we have to continue to encourage him. But we've got to be careful that we don't play into those who want to destroy his presidency and say, you know, the birthers and others who say that, you know, he should have never been president to begin with. This is, you know, there is a tension that exists, and I've been very critical of the administration on the war, on the so-called cap and trade, and on a whole range of other issues. But at the same time, we have to be just very careful about how much we attack this president, even as we disagree with him. We have to be careful about that, because we may play into those who just want to destroy his presidency. And he's you know, like it or not, he's the president. He's what we have, and I'm going to continue whatever I can do, just as one person, to try to keep trying to influence a different direction. But you know, it's not easy. He's made his position different than, you know, what many of us would go along with.
Well, I'd like to ask Ralph Nader.
Is there a way to work with him?
I'd like to ask Ralph Nader about the issue of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Why you think the anti-war movement has not gone into the streets or taken the kind had the kind of upsurge against the expansion of the war in Afghanistan, for instance, that it did during the high times of the war in Iraq?
First of all, the 2004 election with Kerry and Bush, the anti-war movement, most of the groups gave Kerry a pass and broke off their mass demonstrations. It broke the momentum. Momentum is very important in mass demonstrations. Second, there are fewer people in Congress that the anti-war people can cling to. And that's a demoralization effect on people. And third, it costs a lot of money to put these demonstrations on, and there aren't many super rich anti-war Americans like George Soros and others who are putting some money to get the buses and get the demonstrations all over the country. And finally, the Washington Post, New York Times, they do not give adequate coverage to anti-war demonstrations compared to the coverage they've been giving to the Tea Parties. Just check the column inches in the Washington Post covering the Tea Parties compared to blacking out pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian demonstrations, for example, when the Israelis invaded Gaza, or the upcoming demonstrations against the war. All of this demoralizes people, and they say, what are we doing this for? And so, unfortunately, the political leaders are not leading, and the president is not leading. We cannot give this president courtesy of words, of course, but we cannot give this president a pass.
We have to leave it there.
He controls
Ralph Nader and Congressmember Kucinich, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Alan Nairn will be on with us to talk about Indonesia tomorrow. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thank you so much for joining us.